In the skies where speed rules, where stealth is king, there's one machine that doesn't play by the rules. It doesn't need a runway. It doesn't wait for permission. It lifts off like a helicopter and strikes like a jet fighter, a jet that defies gravity, a machine born from necessity, and a legend that changed how wars are fought forever. The 1950s were a turning point in aviation. Jet engines were revolutionizing the skies, and militaries worldwide were searching for ways to dominate the battlefield from above, but there was a problem. Jet fighters needed long, vulnerable runways. In a future war, especially a nuclear one, runways would be the first things destroyed. The British saw this risk early. What if the fighter could take off vertically, like a helicopter, but fight like a jet? That's when engineers began working on a revolutionary concept. It wasn't just bold, it was borderline crazy. But that's what made it so powerful. From this idea, the Hawker Siddeley P.1127 was born. It was the grandfather of what would one day become the Harrier. It was small, underpowered, and unstable, but it worked. It hovered, it flew, and it fought in 1969. The Royal Air Force brought the first Harrier JR.1 into service. The world's first operational VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, jet fighter, the United States Marine Corps took notice. The Marines needed a close air support jet that could fly from short, damaged airstrips or even from helicopter carriers. The Harrier was the answer, but it wasn't perfect. It was underpowered and carried too little fuel and weapons. So in the late 1970s, a joint effort between McDonnell Douglas and British Aerospace began to create a better version, a second-generation Harrier. And so, the AV-8B Harrier II was born. Designing a jet that could hover and fight wasn't easy. The Harrier II was built around one key component, the Rolls-Royce Pegasus turbofan engine, which could redirect its thrust through four swiveling nozzles, two on each side of the aircraft. By directing thrust downward, the Harrier could take off vertically. By adjusting the nozzles in flight, it could hover, transition, and even fly backwards or sideways. This made the Harrier incredibly versatile, but also incredibly difficult to fly. It required nerves of steel, fast reflexes, and intense training. Pilots called it a bucking bronco, because one small mistake during vertical flight could mean disaster. The AV-8B Harrier II wasn't just a tech marvel, it was a warrior. It made its combat debut with the U.S. Marines in the Gulf War in 1991. Flying from forward bases and amphibious assault ships, the Harrier delivered brutal air support during Operation Desert Storm. Its ability to operate close to the front lines made it invaluable. The Harrier flew over 3,000 combat missions, attacking tanks, artillery, and enemy positions, often in poor weather and hostile terrain, where other jets couldn't go despite its short legs and limited payload compared to bigger jets. Its mobility and strike power made it a frontline favorite. After its success in the Gulf War, the AV-8B Harrier II was tested again, this time in the skies over the Balkans. During the Bosnian War in the 1990s and later the Kosovo conflict, NATO relied heavily on close air support to protect civilians and peacekeeping forces. The Harrier once again became the go-to aircraft for Marine pilots. Operating from amphibious assault ships stationed in the Adriatic Sea, Harriers could launch and reach the battlefield within minutes. No need for air bases deep inside Europe. No need for massive infrastructure. Precision strikes, flexibility, and the ability to hover over complex terrain made the Harrier invaluable in missions where timing and accuracy were everything. The post 9/11 world brought the Harrier back into action, this time in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan and the cities of Iraq and Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Harriers operated from small, forward-deployed bases, and Navy ships their job, close air support. Marines on the ground could call in a Harrier strike, and within minutes, the jet would appear above, delivering laser-guided bombs, rockets, and even strafing runs with its 25mm Gu-12 cannon. It became a guardian angel for troops under fire, and because of its vertical takeoff ability, the Harrier could operate from locations other jets simply couldn't, including makeshift runways, highway strips, and small islands. Flying the Harrier II was no ordinary task. It was a rite of passage, even among elite Marine aviators. Harrier pilots were considered a different breed. The transition from vertical takeoff to forward flight, known as VIFing, was a high-risk maneuver. Get it wrong, and the aircraft could stall or crash. But when mastered, the Harrier became an aerial acrobat, capable of hovering like a hummingbird and striking like a hawk. Veteran Harrier pilot Major Art Knowles, who later flew a privately owned Harrier, once said the cockpit was cramped, the controls unforgiving, and unlike modern fly-by-wire jets, the Harrier required manual precision, but those who flew it, they never forgot it. The Harrier's unique design came at a cost. Throughout its career, the Harrier developed a reputation for being accident-prone. Between the 1970s and 2000s, dozens of Harriers were lost to mechanical failures, pilot error, or landing mishaps. Vertical takeoff and landing placed enormous stress on the engine and airframe. One small malfunction, and the jet could lose lift and crash instantly. But to the Marines, the risk was worth the reward. No other fixed-wing jet could hover, strike, and land on a dime in the heat of battle. It was a high-stakes aircraft. For high-stakes missions in the early 2000s, McDonnell Douglas, now merged into Boeing, upgraded the Harrier II into its final form, the AV-8B Harrier II+. This version came with radar systems for air-to-air targeting, enhanced night vision and infrared sensors, compatibility with AMRAAM and Sidewinder missiles, improved engines and cockpit displays, more advanced targeting pods like the Lightning system. This made the Harrier not just a close support beast, but a true multi-role fighter that could take out tanks, bunkers, and even enemy aircraft, all while operating from sea or land. Vertically by the 2010s, the world of fighter jets was changing. Stealth, data fusion, and AI-powered sensors were now the norm, and the Harrier, for all its glory, was aging. Enter the F-35B Lightning II, the first fifth-generation fighter with vertical landing capability. Built by Lockheed Martin, the F-35B was everything the Harrier dreamed of being. Stealthy, fast, powerful, and digitally connected. The U.S. Marines began transitioning from the Harrier to the F-35B around 2015. One by one, the AV-8Bs were retired from service, but the Harrier refused to fade away. Nations like Italy, Spain, and India kept them flying. And even today, U.S. Marine squadrons still operate a few remaining Harrier IIs while the F-35 fully ramps up. Few jets in history have had a more unique profile or a more controversial journey than the Harrier. Some called it a widowmaker. Others called it a flying miracle. But everyone agrees on one thing. The AV-8B Harrier II changed air warfare forever. It proved that jets didn't need runways. That mobility mattered just as much as speed. And that close air support didn't need to wait for permission. For Marines, it was more than a machine. It was a guardian, a hero, a symbol of everything the Corps stood for: courage, innovation, and grit. Today, the Harrier rests in museums and on carrier decks around the world. Some still fly in training. Others await their final mission. But its story will live on in the memories of pilots, the echoes of the battlefield, and the generations of aircraft inspired. From the jungles of Panama to the deserts of Iraq, from amphibious ships to mountain passes, the AV-8B Harrier II soared, hovered, struck, and survived. A vertical warrior in a horizontal world. The Harrier didn't just defy gravity. It defied the rules. While the AV-8B Harrier II was an American evolution, its legacy reached beyond U.S. borders. Several allied nations embraced the Harrier's vertical magic. United Kingdom, the spiritual home of the Harrier. The British Royal Navy and Royal Air Force operated several versions, from the Sea Harrier to the GR.5/GR.7/GR.9 variants. British Harriers served in the Falklands War, where they famously defeated Argentine aircraft despite being outnumbered. Spain, the Spanish Navy, still flies the AV-8B Harrier II+, launching them from the aircraft carrier Juan Carlos I. Their ability to defend the seas and deliver precision strikes makes them crucial for regional operations. Italy Italian Harriers operate from the carrier Cavour, supporting NATO operations and maritime patrols across the Mediterranean. India's Sea Harriers launch from the INS Virat. Though retired now, they once guarded South Asia's waters with agility unmatched by traditional jets. From the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, Harriers earned a reputation as tough, adaptable, and fearless. Becoming a Harrier pilot wasn't just an assignment. It was an initiation into an elite brotherhood. Training began in Pensacola, Florida, where Marine aviators learned the basics. But the real test came at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point in Yuma, Arizona, where pilots faced the beast itself. They learned to handle vertical/short takeoff and landing V/STOL, manage the unpredictable effects of hot, high-altitude airfields, perform rolling vertical landings aboard moving ships, react instantly to engine failures while hovering, a pilot's worst nightmare. Even seasoned aviators admitted that flying a Harrier required a unique mindset, aggressive but calculated, fearless, but disciplined. There were no second chances. One mistake could end in disaster. That's why only the best earn the right to wear the Harrier patch. Behind every Harrier mission lies a story of courage, split-second decisions, and brotherhood. Operation Desert Storm, 1991. Captain Russell Sanborn was shot down over Kuwait while flying a Harrier strike mission. He was captured, tortured, and held as a POW for 26 days. He later returned to fly again, becoming a Marine Corps General. Afghanistan, 2001. Harriers flew dangerous close air missions in mountain terrain. Pilots often had to make visual target confirmations, risking exposure to enemy fire, all to protect Marines under siege. Iraq, 2004. During the Battle of Fallujah, Harriers were launched in rapid succession from amphibious carriers to deliver precision-guided bombs against insurgent strongholds, often within meters of friendly troops. Each mission was a mix of high stress, pinpoint precision, and raw instinct. Each pilot knew the jet could save lives or take their own, depending on every single control input. By the late 2010s, the Harrier was nearing the end of its U.S. service life. The F-35B Lightning II, with its stealth and advanced sensors, began replacing the Harrier in squadron after squadron. But the farewell wasn't sudden. Harrier squadrons were honored with final flights, ceremonies, and commemorative markings. At MCOS Yuma and Cherry Point, veterans and civilians gathered to watch the final vertical landings of jets that had served for over 40 years. The roar of the Pegasus engine echoed across the tarmac. Not as a goodbye, but as a salute. The Harrier didn't go quietly. It went out like it lived, loud, proud, and vertical. The AV-8B Harrier II didn't just conquer battlefields. It captured imaginations. The Harrier starred in movies like True Lies, 1994, where Arnold Schwarzenegger uses one to rescue his daughter and destroy a terrorist group. Its hovering capabilities made it perfect for cinematic drama. From Call of Duty to Ace Combat, gamers flew Harriers into battle, enjoying its unique VTOL powers. It became a favorite for players who love speed with control. Harriers drew massive crowds at air shows. Spectators watched in awe as jets took off vertically, rotated midair, and landed gently, like something out of science fiction. Its futuristic design and impossible maneuvers made an icon for generations raised on fast jets and bold dreams. Even after retirement, the AV-8B Harrier II continues to influence aviation. Its VTOL technology paved the way for the F-35BS lift fan and nozzle system, NASA studies in spaceplane propulsion, civil VTOL aircraft now being tested for urban air mobility. Its core lesson? Mobility is power. In a world where runways might be gone in minutes, jets that can fly from anywhere will always be vital. Harrier pilots today fly other jets or lead squadrons, but they carry its lessons forever. The AV-8B Harrier II wasn't the fastest. It wasn't the stealthiest. It didn't carry the most bombs. But it could do one thing no other fighter could: take off from anywhere and be there when it mattered most. It saved lives. It changed tactics. It rewrote the rules of air power. From its first hover to its final salute, the Harrier remained what it always was: a symbol of defiance, determination, and danger, the vertical legend of the battlefield.